Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I can't be with you all today. I'm traveling with a group of students in Miami this week, and I wanted to do this session live, but the timetabling is pretty much impossible um, with the morning classes. It's not so bad for afternoon classes, but for the morning class, it is absolutely impossible because I'd have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do this online session with you. So, what we're going to do is we're going to record this session and I'm going to upload it for you in time for the so that you have it for the same time as the class you've got tomorrow. Tomorrow, which is probably your today, because I'm about 6 or 7 hours behind. We started looking in the last class before Easter at what could come up in the exam, and I think it's a good idea in this session for us to go over the next kind of block of ideas that would come up in the exam. Now, in the last class, I said to you that you're going to have a kind of a case study, similar but very, very different from the activity two. So with like a completely different focus and completely different activities, and you would expect to find different answers to it. You wouldn't really get much joy with the um, bringing out your ideas on transformational leadership in the case study that I've prepared, because it's not the right choice of leadership with what we know today and with the problems that you're going to find in the case study that I'm going to present to you. The So you'll be asked about leadership in there. You'll be asked about how you can structure and manage change as well. So you need to look at your leadership theories, your leadership styles. You also need to look at the whole question of distributed, collaborative team leadership. And another of the points that you may want to talk about is the whole question of how you're going to motivate people to do this change. And so you're going to need to be able to reflect on intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, the ideas of Deci and Ryan and their self-determination theory, which emphasizes these three basic psychological needs: the need for autonomy, the need for competence, the need for relatedness, in order to get this intrinsic motivation. So if you don't feel any of these three things for work, then you're not going to be heavily motivated. We also talked about rational choice and the more irrational ideas of what drives decision making from the Chicago School of Behavioral Economics. And then we talked about Kahneman, Goleman, and emotional leadership and emotional decision making over the course. We're not going to go into the too much of the psychology of this, but basically this kind of battle we have inside of our brains between this reflexive system that likes to take its time to make decisions and to think about things before we act, and then your kind of Homer Simpson that you've got inside of you, your automatic system, which is a little bit out of control, but also is extremely skilled at things like driving and running away from dangerous wild animals if you happen to chance upon them. The application of lots of these ideas we found in ideas like Maslow, which we've decided is actually quite easy to criticize, because it's focused on a very limited group of people, the original work of Maslow. It's very ethnocentric. It doesn't really take into account cultural or political differences. And, it says that certain things are universal needs, but they're not universal needs to everybody, and they're not universal needs all throughout your life. So it's quite easy to pick holes in the Maslow ideas. We also looked at other theorists from around the same time, the ideas of X and Y theory, Douglas McGregor, and how the type of leadership ideas that you have is going to drive how you deal with people. And there are X theory leaders who believe that people are instinctively lazy and that you need to be disciplined and directed at all times. And Y theory managers probably are a bit more optimistic about the human nature and think that we're all natural workers and that effort is natural to us and that people can apply self-control. As leaders, as managers, you do need to kind of shift between the two quite often. And but these are something that you could mention in your responses to the question that you get about motivating your team and keeping them on target. No, we also looked at the ideas of Hertzberg and his very practical way of dealing with job satisfaction, and as a result with human motivation, which is first we need to eliminate the dissatisfaction, the salary, yeah, extrinsic factors, if you like. We need to eliminate what makes people unhappy with these, and then we can start focusing on motivating them more. But his idea is that basically, if people are unhappy with salary, with company policies, they don't believe in the work, they don't like what they're doing, they don't get on well with their colleagues, and they don't get on well with their bosses, then it doesn't really make any difference. Anything else that we do, they're not going to be motivated or satisfied in the long run. Now, this is quite useful to you in the exam because this is actually a a process that you can work on, and you can build a change strategy for motivation and job satisfaction based on these ideas of Hertzberg and putting them into practice, eliminating the factors for dissatisfaction before you start working on the factors for satisfaction. And this idea, there are two groups of factors, there are two groups of factors which influence job satisfaction and human motivation. Salary, according to Hertzberg, is not one of the main motivators. It kind of belongs more in the group of dissatisfaction. You can only ever really be unhappy with your salary. It's very difficult to be completely happy with your salary. And any salary increases, you get very accustomed to them very quickly. You learn how to spend your money very fast. This is the key thing to remember. Factors leading to job satisfaction, they're separate, they're distinct, they're different from those that lead to job dissatisfaction. And eliminating the reasons for job dissatisfaction will not always increase performance. It may increase job satisfaction, though. Okay. I think you can skip these. There are also kind of more rational choice theories and Adam Smith based theories for human motivation. One of the oldest one is the needs theory. We looked in more detail at expectancy theory from Victor Vroom and his idea from the 1960s that individuals make choices based on what they expect the result will be. So if you don't really believe that you have the capacity or the desire to do something because you don't find the rewards desirable, then you won't be motivated to do it. These kind of move into the nudge ideas that we looked at as well. The nudge is kind of a little bit of a mix between the two. But all of those ideas are ideas that you could use in the exam questions related to human motivation. And there's one more really good one, which we're going to zip to here. Looks at quite a lot of stuff on and this is this idea of nudge. Nudge is very popular in marketing. Here we've got a photo from the marketing the advertising agency Ogilvy. Nudge is this kind of a psychological manipulation based on certain perceived cognitive biases that human beings have. These are the ideas of the Nobel Prize winners Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein, who believe that people can be pushed gently to make better decisions if we use a bit of psychology and use some of these ideas of social pressure by offering the most popular. We've got the decoy effect here of nobody's going to pay 119 euros for something, and it's only there to make 39 euros look cheaper. So you can explore these ideas again in the notes that you've got for this section, because this could also be something that you might want to use and to apply in the exam coming up. Okay. So that's the area of motivation. Performance motivation is best approached by using the ideas of Teresa Amabile and Steve Kramer, and their idea of this inner life work system, and their discovery through research and through their many interviews and a journal keeping study, that of all the things that boost emotions, motivation, perceptions during a work day, the most important is making progress. So when people feel they are making progress in meaningful work, and the more frequently that they feel this progress, the more likely they are to be creatively productive in the long run. And this is important because it approaches the idea of these differences between knowledge workers and factory workers, or people working in producing things or in offering services which start and finish in the day, kind of like restaurants and things like that. Knowledge workers, it's very difficult to know what they're doing, or if they're doing anything, or if they're just wasting their time. With knowledge workers, says Teresa Amabile, so this is kind of very much a why theory approach to leadership. Your job as a leader is to clear the path. Okay, so it's kind of a servant leadership idea, and there's adaptive leadership in this. Okay, and to do that, we need to focus on catalysts. The catalysts help people to work, and they eliminate the toxins. Where are they here? The toxic elements that negatively affect. Here you've got the nourishment versus the toxins. So when there's no respect, there's disrespect. It's going to make people work worse. Teresa Amabile, you've got this in the notes, worked on this progress audit. And by reading through the audit, you very much get a very clear idea of what her idea is. It's kind of a coaching idea. It's a self-coaching, self-audited progress idea. Progress audit. Now, it's kind of similar to other ideas in the past from very successful best-selling authors on leadership. Stephen Covey and his 7 habits of extremely irritating people. Was a massive bestseller for many, many years. A lot of people applied those ideas, and really they're all very similar. What they're asking you to do is to reflect on your work, to reflect on yourself, and to reflect on what helps you progress and what doesn't help you progress. So we've talked about ideas of leadership, we've talked about ideas of motivation, we've talked about change management as well, and we've looked at all of these things at least a couple of times. Remember, change management, you've got the ideas of John Kotter, which is probably the best of the change processes to use, although adaptive leadership is also kind of a change process model as well. All of these ideas of leadership are process based. They've got a process attached to them, and this makes them more doable and more useful for us than these kind of very vague, wishy-washy ideas of things like transformational leadership, which is fine, but it's very difficult to actually explain how to do it. Okay, so the final part of your final exam here is going to look at the whole idea of innovation, and also the ideas that we looked at of complex problem solving. So I'm going to go over those again. I'm going to be sharing some shorter videos with you as well before the exam, the RCS technique that we use for the car park. Another technique I'm going to share with you is related to the toast activity. And these, in the final section of the case study exam, I will ask you to solve a complex problem. And I'm not really worried about your solution here, so you can't chat GPT this. I'm much more worried about your use of and reflection on the creative process. And to do that, you're going to need to choose one of these processes that we've looked at, the toast idea, the a lot of the other ideas, and you're going to need to apply it and then explain why and how it worked or didn't work. I mean, it may not work, but you do need to know the process and explain the process to me. Why is that important? Well, as we've said in this course, um, you've got these kind of three recent big blocks of paradigms, if you like, of leadership and management. The 70s and 80s, it was all about leaders being strategists. They were all reading Sun Tzu and Tom Peters and all of the big strategy books. And we believed that leadership was all about choosing strategy. Now, you looked at lots of strategy with David Guardo in the 90s up to 2015. We thought it was about execution, getting things done. And there were lots of courses on time management, how to run effective meetings, making presentations, negotiation techniques, the art of the deal, Donald Trump, and a lot of these how-to books from I'd say this started earlier than 2015. I believe that from the global economic crisis of 2008, 2008, we started thinking that leadership was much more closely related to entrepreneurship. And also you got the rise of Silicon Valley as well, coming into this, and a lot of rhetoric coming out of there more than the reality about complex problem solving and in entrepreneurship in startups. And as a lot of companies disappeared, government started investing a lot of money as well in courses on how to build startups and so on. And we get these ideas of agile and creative problem solving techniques. Now, these include but not limited to the ideas of complex problem solving. Here we look briefly at the bulletproof method, and we did together the Alexander de Haan, Pauline de Heer process. We've looked at design thinking as well. Some of you have studied design thinking, and we looked at creative problem solving techniques. All of these are very, 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 very important today. And these are the kinds of skills that your future employers are going to be looking for. They want to see that you dominate these processes, that you understand them, and that you can manage them. And sorry about that. And question, doubt, and use your healthy skepticism and research and scientific methods to make more informed and less dangerous decisions. These are the key competencies from the OECD, but also the World Economic Forum, the World Bank. They've all got their lists of key competencies. In the top 10 of the 20 key competencies, at the very top is the idea of complex problem solving. And that could be data driven, but it could also be design thinking driven. There are lots of ways to solve problems, but you need to know the processes in order to be able to use the tools. Problem solving is a bit like carpentry or building houses. You need to dominate the tools, really. The McKinsey bulletproof problem is a 7-step problem, very popular. Its idea is starts off with breaking your problems down using kind of decision trees or mind maps in order to discover which things are fixed, which are the variables, and how you can modify the variables in order to influence the results. So in an airport capacity question, I'd be thinking about the supply, the number of runways, capacity of the runways, the hours a day I can use the runways, and then comparing this with the demand, the regional market demand, market share, and so on. Okay, so I'll be looking at those two and seeing how I can modify one in order to affect the result or guarantee that something is adequate. It's quite a complex method, uses maths. So it's not one of my favorites because I'm not one of the happiest quantitative decision makers. I'm kind of much more at home with observation and interviews, but that's basically just my background. But they use these decision trees in order to see how the variables are going to be affected if I change one, what will be the knock-on effect of all of the others. It's kind of similar to the other big process that we looked at, which is the Pauline de Haan problem solving technique, which isn't on here for some reason. But I'll be uploading that for you, which is more related to a more qualitative decision making process. Okay, let me just see if I can open that for you now. I've got so many copies of all of these presentations that they sometimes get a little bit Here it is. Okay, so the hand here method, which started off with, again, it's another circle, identifying stakeholders, needs, creating hierarchies, maps, and so on. Identifying the stakeholders. If I want to organize a party, we talked in class, we gave the example of the graduation ceremony, identifying stakeholders, fixing objectives, and using hierarchy maps in order to get to objectives which are quantifiable, and then comparing these objectives with the objectives of our other stakeholders in the problem. So stakeholders can be anybody who is affected by the problem that we're trying to solve. So if it's a birthday party, everybody here is a stakeholder, including the police, my neighbors, my daughters, everyone. And they've all got different objectives and different needs. And in order to find the conflict here, the complexity, I need to compare and contrast those needs. Okay. And then once I've done that, I map the whole thing again using mind maps this time, rather than a tree, a decision tree. And then I see how the variables affecting the variables is going to affect the end result. And that's going to help me to drive better decisions in my creative process. We remember this process, this creative processes, where we identified realities. There aren't enough parking spaces, a need, we should or we must build more parking spaces. This is Boolean logic. This is if A, then B, but that's only going to lead us to probably the most expensive solution. Let's build an underground car park. That's definitely the most. But if I change the reality, the perspective of the problem, there are too many students, there are too many cars, then I need to reduce the number of students, I need to reduce the number of cars. That's going to generate a different solution, and that helps me to generate more answers and probably find cheaper and better solutions. It's also going to allow me to understand that many problems can be complex, and this complexity means that I need to find lots of alternative solutions because there's no clean, perfect solution. So I need to find lots of clumsy or imperfect solutions, and they're probably all going to be a lot cheaper than building an underground car park. And that is what companies and organizations need today. They need people who can generate lots of ideas. Now, you may say, well, ChatGPT can generate lots of ideas. Yes, but it's not very good at selecting from them. It's extremely lazy when it comes to selecting good ideas and reasoning good ideas. And in that sense, we're probably better equipped as human beings, definitely for the moment, at least. Although you could do this activity using AI, you could train a chat bot to understand and recognize this tool. Yes, it's an interesting idea. I need to practice that. We also looked at the toast activity where we deconstructed toast into different columns, if you remember. Then we generated lots and lots of alternatives, and we joined those alternatives together in order to make new toasts. And this really is a creative process. All of these problem-solving processes, all of the creative processes, they're all the same. You open a concept, you open a problem, you explore it, and then you start to close it again. And you may close it in many different solutions because it may be something which needs a lot of different solutions. Now, and that is a creative process. It's a critical thinking process as well, because it's filtering, it's evaluating the validity of your arguments, and it's avoiding the pitfalls of these kind of very dumb, fast responses. No, 5 machines take 5 minutes to produce 5 widgets. How long will 100 machines take to produce 100 widgets? Well, your brain wants to say 100, but it's not 100. And to find that solution, you need to slow down. No, you need to take your time in order to find the solution. You can work on that solution yourselves. Okay, so those are some ideas, some notes, some thoughts on the exam and on the type of activities you're going to need to respond to in that exam. You've also got a quite simple final activity, which I want you to do in groups. It's basically just a group presentation, a video presentation, which you then upload the link. You can do it in using your Teams account from Microsoft. I've recorded this session using Teams. I'll be back at the end of this week, and I'll be back in Thesine on Tuesday. You've got a day off on Thursday because it's the bank holiday. It's the May Day holiday, which is a holiday pretty much anywhere. If you've got any doubts, any questions, send me messages through the forum or to my email. I'm sorry I'm recording this. I did want to do this live and invite you all to a session live, but I'd have to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which is probably not a great idea. Okay, so I shall see you all next week. If you have any questions, any doubts, let me know and I'll be in touch. Okay, I'm gonna now upload this as a link. Probably I'll convert this into a YouTube to upload it. Okay, greetings from Miami. My watch has gone crazy. Okay, by the way, Miami is so tacky. It's it is like a very tacky place. It's kind of crass and hortera is the word in Spanish. It's fun, but it's interesting. Okay, ciao.